Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. Today we're going to be tackling something I think we all think about, but maybe don't want to think about too much.
Yeah.
And that's the fear of death.
Big topic.
Yeah, it is a big one. And, we're approaching this through the lens of a single verse
Okay.
from the Bhaja Govindam by Adi Shankaracharya. And I think it's going to be really interesting to kind of unpack this one verse because it really does. It packs a punch.
Yeah, this is a verse that basically promises us liberation from the fear of death through 3 surprisingly simple actions.
Really? Okay, so what does the verse actually say?
So it states that by studying even just a little bit of the Bhagavad Gita, drinking a drop of water from the sacred river Ganga, and worshiping Lord Krishna,
Okay.
one need not fear Yama, the Lord of Death.
Wow. Okay. So we are already right off the bat knee deep in symbolism here.
Yeah.
For listeners who maybe aren't familiar with some of these figures, can we just do a super quick rundown of who's who?
Sure. Yeah. So the Bhagavad Gita is like a foundational Hindu text, and it's often described as a dialogue on yoga devotion and the nature of reality. The Ganga is considered to be a sacred river, and its waters are believed to have purifying powers.
Okay.
And Krishna is a central deity in Hinduism and represents love, compassion, and divine playfulness. And finally, we have Yama, who is the Lord of Death.
Okay.
And he embodies the transition from this life to the next.
So it sounds like what the verse is saying is that if we engage with these elements like wisdom, purification, devotion, then that can lead to a state where, death doesn't hold any fear.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's really important to remember that the verse isn't advocating for blind faith or really literal interpretations.
Okay.
It's pointing us towards a deeper inner transformation.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's not just about, going through the motions. It's
Right.
about actually understanding the meaning behind these actions.
Yes.
So I think it'd be really interesting to kind of break down each of these actions individually, starting with studying the Bhagavad Gita. So how does studying this text relate to overcoming the fear of death?
Yeah, so the Bhagavad Gita isn't simply a story. It's really a guide to understanding the eternal self, the part of us that exists beyond the physical body and therefore beyond death.
Okay.
One of the most powerful teachings in the Gita is this idea of equanimity, remaining steady and peaceful amidst all of the ups and downs of life,
Yeah.
including the inevitability of death.
So it's about connecting with a deeper truth that transcends our physical existence, allowing us to kind of face death with more calmness and acceptance.
Exactly. And this connection is cultivated through really deep contemplation of the Gita's teachings, not just, kind of reading the words.
Yeah, not just skimming it, going, yep, okay, I got it.
Right.
Really diving deep into it.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's a really interesting perspective. Now, what about drinking the waters of the Ganga?
Okay.
I'm really curious about the symbolism there.
Yeah. So the Ganga is considered a purifier, and drinking its waters symbolizes this cleansing of mental and emotional impurities.
Okay.
Think of it as a metaphor for washing away fear, attachment, and ego that really cloud our perception and intensify our fear of death.
So it's not about literally, going and drinking from the river.
No.
It's about purifying our inner world
Exactly.
to allow for a clearer, less fearful perspective on life and death.
Exactly. It's about creating this space for inner peace and clarity, which naturally diminishes the grip of fear.
Okay, I'm starting to see how these seemingly disparate actions are starting to connect to this common theme.
Yeah.
And then finally we have worshiping Lord Krishna.
Okay.
So how does that fit into this picture of liberation from the fear of death?
So Krishna represents the divine, that ultimate reality that kind of permeates everything. And worshiping Krishna isn't about empty rituals.
Okay.
It's about surrender and deep devotion, recognizing a power greater than ourselves, which can help us move beyond the fear of the unknown.
So it's about kind of letting go of our ego's need to control everything.
Yeah.
And trusting in a greater force that's going to be there for us even in the face of death.
Exactly. And in that surrender, we find a sense of peace and security that transcends our individual fears.
It's incredible how each of these actions, studying, purifying, surrendering,
Right.
seems to lead toward this inner transformation that ultimately lessens the fear of death.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of this verse, is that it's presenting a path to liberation through practices that, while rooted in Hindu tradition, offer universal wisdom applicable to anyone seeking to navigate their own fears around mortality.
Yeah. I love that. It strikes me that all of these actions that we've been talking about, studying the Gita, purifying ourselves, surrendering to a higher power, they all seem to require a certain level of turning inward, like quieting the mind.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a key part of this whole equation?
You've hit on something really crucial here. Cultivating inner stillness is absolutely fundamental to this whole process of liberation. Think of it this way. How can we truly hear the whispers of wisdom from the Bhagavad Gita or experience the cleansing flow of the Ganga within if our minds are constantly cluttered with fear and anxiety?
So stillness isn't just about like being physically quiet. It's
Right.
about creating a space where these deeper transformations can actually happen.
Precisely. It's about creating this sanctuary within a space where we can connect with our true selves without being burdened by the weight of fear and worry. And this is where practices like meditation and contemplation become so incredibly valuable.
Okay, so let's talk about meditation.
Okay.
Full disclosure, I've tried meditation before, and my mind tends to resemble a popcorn machine.
Yeah.
When I do it, thoughts just pop up everywhere. Is that normal?
That's totally normal.
Okay.
The mind is naturally active, and expecting it to become completely silent is like expecting a river to stop flowing.
Yeah.
The key is to just simply observe those thoughts without judgment and gently guide your attention back to the breath.
Yeah.
Or a mantra or any other focal point that you choose.
So it's about training our minds to be less reactive to every thought that pops up and allowing us to experience those moments of true stillness.
Exactly. And the more we practice, the easier it becomes to access those moments of quiet. And in those moments, we can truly experience the transformative power of these practices that we've been talking about.
You mentioned contemplation earlier.
Yes.
How does that differ from meditation, and how does that tie into this whole journey of conquering fear?
So contemplation is about engaging with wisdom teachings on a much deeper level. So it's about taking a passage from the Bhagavad Gita, for instance, and really pondering its meaning.
Okay.
Asking yourself, how does this teaching apply to my life? How can it help me navigate my own fears and challenges?
So it's about taking those teachings beyond intellectual understanding and letting them kind of permeate our hearts and minds and guide our actions and shape our perspectives.
Exactly. It's about integrating those teachings into the very fabric of our being, allowing them to transform us from the inside out.
This all makes me think back to the verse's mention of Yama, the Lord of Death. And you mentioned earlier that Yama isn't just about physical death, but he represents something more.
Yes.
Could you expand on that a little bit?
You're right. Yama embodies more than just the end of physical life. He symbolizes all the fears and limitations that we experience when we identify solely with our physical bodies and our material possessions.
Yeah.
He represents our attachment to the temporary and the anxiety that comes from knowing that we will eventually lose it all.
So Yama is almost like a personification of our own fear of loss of impermanence.
Precisely. And when we cling so tightly to the things of this world, our fear of Yama, our fear of loss grows stronger. But when we cultivate inner stillness, we start to loosen that grip.
Okay.
We begin to see beyond the impermanent nature of things and connect with a deeper, more lasting reality.
It sounds like this process of inner transformation that we've been talking about really helps us to recognize that we are more than just these physical bodies. We're more than our possessions and achievements.
Yeah.
And in that recognition, that fear of death starts to lose its power over us.
That's beautifully put. It's about shifting our identification from the transient to the eternal, from the limited self to the boundless self that resides within us all. And this shift, this realization, is the key to unlocking true liberation from the fear of death.
This is all incredibly powerful, but I imagine some listeners might be feeling a little bit overwhelmed. Cultivating inner stillness and confronting our fears and kind of reorienting our entire sense of self can seem like a really daunting task.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give to someone who's just beginning this journey?
It's important to remember that this is a journey, not a destination.
Right.
There's no need to pressure yourself to achieve some perfect state of fearlessness overnight.
Yeah.
The key is to start with small, consistent steps.
So it's about progress, not perfection.
Absolutely. Even 5 minutes of meditation a day can have a profound impact over time.
Yeah.
And remember, every time you notice your mind getting caught up in that fear or anxiety, you have an opportunity to practice gently guide your attention back to the present moment, to your breath, to your body. These small acts of mindfulness, practiced consistently, can lead to remarkable transformations.
That's encouraging. It's a reminder that we all have the power to cultivate this inner peace, even amidst all the challenges of life.
And you're right, we already have everything we need for this journey within us. The Bhagavad Gita offers us wisdom. The Ganga symbolizes that purifying power of grace that's always available. And Krishna represents the divine force that supports us every step of the way.
It's like we're being given a map to our own inner freedom, a set of tools to help us navigate the challenges of life, including the ultimate challenge of facing our own mortality.
I love that analogy. And remember, this map isn't hidden away in some remote monastery. It's accessible to anyone who's willing to turn inward and embark on this journey of self-discovery.
That's a really empowering message. It means that liberation from fear isn't some exclusive club. It's an open invitation to anyone seeking greater peace and understanding. This has been such a fascinating exploration, and I'm so curious to know how these concepts resonate with our listeners. Like, how can understanding these ideas, studying the Gita, purifying our inner world, surrendering to something larger than ourselves, how can all of that help us kind of navigate our own anxieties around death?
It's such a great question. And honestly, it's a question that each of us has to answer for ourselves.
Yeah.
But I think one of the key takeaways here is that liberation from the fear of death doesn't actually mean denying death's reality.
Okay.
It's about changing our perspective,
Yeah.
recognizing that death, just like life, is a natural process.
Mm-hmm.
It's a transition,
Yeah.
not an ending.
And it sounds like cultivating that inner stillness that we talked about is
Yeah.
really essential in making that shift,
Yeah.
allowing us to see past those fears and connect with that deeper understanding of life and death.
Exactly. And the beautiful thing is that we can start cultivating that inner peace right now. In this moment, we don't have to wait for some future event or achieve some grand spiritual milestone practices like meditation contemplation. Even simple acts of mindfulness in our daily lives can really pave the way for a profound transformation.
So even in the busyness of our everyday lives, we have these opportunities to integrate these teachings.
We do.
But how do we make these ancient concepts relevant to our modern everyday experiences?
It starts with just becoming more aware of our thoughts and emotions.
Okay.
When we notice that fear or anxiety arising, instead of getting swept away by it, we can pause, take a breath, observe those feelings without judgment,
Yeah.
and remind ourselves of these truths that we've been exploring, that we are more than our physical bodies, that we are connected to this source of infinite love and wisdom, and that death is not an end but a transition.
It's like we have a toolkit of wisdom that we can pull from whenever those fears and anxieties start to creep in.
Exactly. And the more we use these tools, the more accessible they become. And we can begin to shift our relationship with fear, moving from a place of reactivity to a place of greater peace and acceptance.
This brings us to a final question for you, our listener.
Okay.
The verse that we've been exploring today mentions drinking the waters of the Ganga. So what does that metaphor mean to you personally? What impurities, whether they be fears or limiting beliefs or negative thought patterns, might you need to cleanse from your own inner world to experience greater peace and freedom?
It's such a powerful question to reflect on. And, we each have our own metaphorical Ganga, our own inner river of purification.
Yeah.
Maybe it's time to take a deep dive within and explore those rookie depths and allow that grace and wisdom to wash away what no longer serves us.
And remember, even a single drop can make a difference. The journey towards liberation, towards a life free from that grip of fear, begins with a single step, a single breath, a single moment of awareness. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. May these teachings inspire you to cultivate your own inner sanctuary, connect with the boundless wisdom within, and live a life filled with peace, purpose, and freedom.